everyone, I'm Denisha Devnarayan, and you're watching the Full Quota podcast on One World Sports Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Full Quota podcast with myself and Tim. This week, it's an interesting week because we've had so much cricket. It's been a cricketing feast, Tim. We've had CSA T20, we've had World T20 qualifiers where Scotland somehow found a way to make it through. And obviously today, we'll see Sri Lanka try to figure out whether they're going to join the Proteas as the winners of Group A in that tournament, or even Ireland, or maybe even Namibia. We'll see how that goes, but obviously that's going on in and around while we're recording, as well as also the CSA T20 final between the Knights and the Dolphins, which is a final we wanted to see. We got there in a very interesting way, but we're there nonetheless, Tim.
Yeah, it's been a hectic week all around. But as you say, although this podcast is a slightly different one, it's going to be interesting to see what happens this afternoon in the T20 final.
Yes,
but
and
as you
so
say,
today,
yeah.
So today
carry on.
The theme for today is World T20. It starts tomorrow. Opening game is South Africa versus Australia. So after the opening ceremony, the two foes, I think we still call each other foes, maybe there's a rivalry, will come against each other. Hopefully they will get through. Remember, we've always told you throughout the podcast over the past couple of weeks, if South Africa can win these first two games, we will be in the semifinals. By next week, Tuesday, if we beat the West Indies and somehow win against Australia, you might as well just book a ticket to the semifinals and go watch them, because that probably is how it's going to be, even depending on how obviously the other qualifiers work, but we're assuming that we should be able to beat the qualifiers. But today we're focusing South Africa and Australia. World T20 preview. We've got Jelisa Apps with us from Australia. She's a sports journalist in Sydney, and she's going to tell us all about the Australian team. We haven't been following the Australian team that much. We saw that they played some of the warm-up games. They're 0-2 in both of those. South Africa 2-0 in theirs. So we could pull out something, but let's bring her on and let's have a good chat here. Tim. Hi, Jelisa. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. With obviously the discussion today is the match tomorrow, South Africa versus Australia. From an Australian perspective, the World Cup preparation hasn't been that great, Jelisa. How has the mood in Australia been around this tournament? You guys are perennial tournament chasers, trophy chasers when it comes to cricket. Is it the same mood as all other tournaments?
Well, I actually think this has flown under the radar a little bit. I think because we're coming out of the season of the other big sports in Australia, which is AFL and NRL. It's quite funny to me speaking. I obviously follow cricket quite closely, but sometimes speaking to other people at the moment, they don't actually even know that there's a World Cup happening, which is so bizarre to me. But I think just because we've been overcome with both of AFL and NRL in Australia, that they're like, oh, no one's quite got their mind around the fact that it is cricket season. So everyone's talking actually about the Ashes here, but not as many people are talking about the World Cup. And even I've said to a couple of people, oh, it's so good we've got the World Cup coming on, on Saturday to watch. And they said, oh, is that the Women's World Cup? Like, what's on? I said, no, it's the Men's 2020 World Cup. And it's just kind of flown under the radar for people that only really follow it in a fringe kind of way. But for people who follow it closely, one of the most surprising things for me has been the calls for Steve Smith to be dropped has just been wild to me before. I just can't even, and leading the charge was Shane Warne, and I just couldn't believe that. I mean, obviously he's not that specialist T20 player, but the state of our team at the moment is not good, and to be talking about dropping Steve Smith has just blown my mind. I do a cricket podcast with another two cricket fans in Australia, and we are at war because I just can't believe it. And one of the other hosts is pro dropping Steve Smith. I just can't believe it.
It's certainly a strange situation. It would be like us happy that we've dropped Faf du Plessis, which we absolutely are not.
We've done that.
we've done it, so we're not happy about it.
Very true. Yeah, and I think I was actually really glad to see him do so well in the warm-up, particularly against India, just trying to put those fears at bay, because honestly, who are you going to bring in? We're not doing well. I don't think Australia is positioned very well at all. It wouldn't surprise me if we crashed out in the group stages.
Oh, that would be something else. That would truly be something else. Can you just take us through some of the issues that this Australian team has? Because before COVID, Australia were number one in the world. After that series in South Africa, they went to the top of the pops. But then obviously COVID happens, and then things start changing. Players start losing form. Players, obviously, you toured with some players that like teams that are half full or half strong. So how has that these past 18 months been for this T20 side?
It's been really rough. I think we're now number 7 in the world. And part of it has been because of COVID. We had players that didn't play the sort of lead up matches, which we had against Bangladesh and West Indies, where we didn't go well. And part of that was because some of them had been in bubbles for various other IPL and things like that. And obviously in Australia, our quarantine is very strict. We're only just now starting to talk about not doing quarantine. So if you can't leave Australia basically at the moment if you're a normal citizen, but if any sporting teams leave and they need to come back, they have to do 14 days quarantine. And so that had really worn down a lot of players, and they were and also you have to quarantine, but they have to quarantine between states too. So there was a situation there where like they were playing overseas, coming in and quarantining in Adelaide, and then the players that were from Western Australia had to then do another 14 days quarantine. So it's 28 days quarantine that they had to do. So it was wearing thin, which has meant that those warm-up games, not everybody played. I mean, the teams that played against Bangladesh and West Indies don't even look slightly like the team that we are taking to the World Cup, which has definitely hampered our preparation. But also then there's players that have just not performed in the IPL. We've got the Ashes coming up, which I definitely think is in the back of everybody's mind, because a lot of them do see the Ashes as the pinnacle in Australia of they want to play the test players. That's what they want to play. And so T20 does take a bit of a backseat for them. And we've got, Warner and Finch are in terrible form in the shorter format. And Warner in particular can turn that round pretty quickly. Aaron Finch has been really hot and cold for the past few years. I honestly don't think, if he wasn't captain, I really don't know that he would have made the team. So we've got a few guys. Mitch Marsh wasn't good in the warm-ups, but I think he is someone who will play a really big role for us. But even our bowlers the other night did nothing against India. So I just think it's taken a bit of a back seat, the preparations over the past 18 months, particularly because of COVID, but because cricket is just there's so many different fixtures all over the world at the moment that it's really hard to fit them all in. And we do take a back seat. 2020 takes a back seat in Australia for those other guys.
Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly very strange to hear an Aussie be so despondent about their cricket team. Obviously, growing up, I've been so used to Australian team being so confident going into World Cups.
I know.
Just on that, the openers is certainly, from a South African perspective, I think the openers is a problem. But what I see going into the countries that are going to play the World Cup is a bigger problem, is a lack of spin bowlers. So you've got your Zampa, and then you've got Maxi, who's going to bowl a couple of overs. But Maxi's a batsman who can bowl a bit. So you're going into your 11 with probably one spinner. And a lot of teams are going to go in with 2 and 3. So that's a huge problem.
Yeah, and I think Adam Zampa is sort of our first choice spinner, but I actually think Mitchell Swepson would be a better choice and seems to be able to turn the ball a bit more. And what's really funny to me is that Nathan Lyon has never been considered as a shorter format bowler, and I just find that so bizarre because I actually think is someone that could do really well in the 2020 and can turn the ball. But he's just never been considered. So you're right. We do have a lack of spinners. Finally, in the quick side, we've finally realised that Josh Hazelwood actually might be good at 2020, which is another person that has been left out for a few years and just kind of overlooked at times. And then he went really well in the IPL, and so he's in the side. So finally, we're taking notice of that. So that's good. But yeah, you're right. Spin is a problem.
And looking at that batting lineup, obviously you've got Warner and Finch, and obviously Warner is in a bad patch of form, but on any day he can blow you away. And Finch looking, I would say, past his prime, but I think the jury's still out in there, because if I say that today and tomorrow he scores 100, I probably would have jinxed it, but it is what it is. But then that middle order seems very interesting. We saw Mitchell Marsh coming in at 3, which I found quite wild myself. I was like, what is Mitch Marsh doing batting at 3? But I kind of get the whole need to like accelerate. And then to a certain extent, you've got Maxi coming in at 4, which I agree with, because I think he's the go-to guy to kind of break any side. And then Steve Smith floating in and around that batting order as some sort of a filler in case there's a top order collapse. How's that middle order looking, and what do you think it will look like tomorrow? And also with Stoinis, because Marcus Stoinis is also kind of like in there and in and out. We're not too sure.
I think it'll look very similar to what we saw in the lead-up game to India. But the one thing that I think could change is perhaps Matthew Wade drops out and Josh Inglis slips in, because he's obviously been in pretty good form, and Matthew Wade hasn't. I think the role that I hope Steve Smith is going to play, and I hope that they will use him as a bit of a floater. If everything is going drastically, get him in there, and if we're ticking along okay, then push him further down. But I hope that they don't set the role for him too early. I hope they're a little bit more flexible with him. But I think Mitch Marsh, I think the key to him is actually playing him up the order, so playing at that number 3 spot. And Marcus Stoinis, I mean, this is the funny thing about all of these batters, is that they can either put on 200 or be all out for 70. And I think that is the thing with where Steve Smith will come in, is that he's the only person that I honestly look at in that order and know that he won't throw away his wicket.
That's solid rock, if you like. It seems to be a something that doesn't happen very often. So the West Indies, for example, they don't go with the solid rock. They just go all out. What I was going to ask, just on that, on the guys that I think would have an impact on this tournament for you guys, particularly in the middle order, is Maxwell and Inglis. Maxwell's been in sensational form, and so is Inglis in county cricket. So what sort of role do you see those two guys playing?
Inglis is a fascinating one because, as you said, he's been really good in county cricket, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes in the UAE. It's very different conditions, and I think we're all hoping that he can perform in them, but it's definitely a step up to what he has been doing. And as I said to you, it's actually quite funny, in the back of everyone's mind of the Australian team, I'm sure, is still the Ashes ticking away. And because of in Australia, because of all our quarantine and everything like that, they actually won't get hardly any red ball cricket, if even one game, before the Ashes. So there is a potential that this side that comes back that will play in the Ashes would not have played red ball cricket since they lost to India. And that is a pretty crazy prospect. So the only little thing that could go right about us bombing out of the World Cup, which I think is likely, is we might get a bit more preparation for the Ashes.
Okay, so from a bowling perspective, I think for me, looking at this tournament, obviously you've spoken about the lack of spinners. Is there a role for Ashton Agar in the side? And how many quicks will Australia most likely play throughout this in each game throughout this tournament?
That's a really interesting question, and it'll be very interesting to see who they start with, because someone like Mitchell Starc can be rocks or diamonds. He can either, save the game for us and clean up the tail so quickly and be so dangerous, or he is going to go for so expensive. And the funny thing about this World Cup in comparison to like the one day, the ODI World Cup, is that you just don't have time to lose games. In this one, it's really like every game is so vital. So we don't have the ability to have Mitchell Starc play and then go, be really expensive. And then, we've already dropped a game, and it's disaster when, dropping a game really is putting you on the edge. So I think I would like to see Starc, Cummins, Hazelwood and Swepson as our bowling. I suspect that they will not go with Swepson, but I think that he would be a better choice. I think Adam Zampa will get a go in there, and then I think if Adam Zampa isn't going well, I think they'll bring in Agar instead for the next game. But it'll be interesting to see what they go with. There's a few options there.
So there no room for Richardson with his changes of pace on those slower wickets, which they look a bit slower than normal at the moment.
Yeah, he looked really good against New Zealand, but look, you know what I think what could happen, and I actually hope it doesn't, because I do think Josh Hazelwood should play the first game, but Josh Hazelwood could easily not miss out on the first game, and they have Richardson instead.
That would be quite interesting, because Josh Hazelwood bowled really well for Chennai towards the back end of that IPL.
He did. But there's always been this thing about him that he is not a 2020 bowler, which I just think is such a myth.
Yeah, because I think from a South African perspective, looking at this Australian side, I've earmarked Mitchell Starc, Hazelwood, possibly even Adam Zampa, because I'm like our team's like okay with spin, but I think because we've got a lot of right-handers, a leg spinner just makes a lot of sense in T20. And obviously from a batting perspective, it's rocks or diamonds, but it's always a question of how you handle Glenn Maxwell when he comes in. I think from a South African perspective, and if you can get under the skin of David Warner, which I think we can, with Quinton behind him, then we can make our way through. But from an Australian perspective, when you look at the South African side, what's the sentiment around the cricketing loving public about South Africa?
The really surprising thing for me was leaving out Faf du Plessis. I just thought, particularly when I watched the IPL final, I just thought this is a really bizarre decision. And I don't, obviously I don't follow South Africa as closely as I follow Australia. So I don't know, maybe I was missing something there. Like, why do you think he's been left out?
There's a lot of, there's actually not a lot, but I think everyone else is also a little bit angry about it. But it just came down to the fact that they've been negotiating with Faf for the past year or 6 months to try and get him to play one of the series. But he wasn't able to play one of the series because of his commitments to other tournaments around the world. And also he got concussed in a period where he probably could have played in the West Indies series. But because of that injury in the Pakistan Super League, and so they couldn't find a time, or they could agree, A, I think probably on remuneration, and also B, largely the time to get him into the side, because South Africa values cohesion more than just like the West Indies, who are like, screw this, it's a World Cup year. We apologize for everything we've done to you for the past 4 years. Can you come and win us a trophy? And you can have a song to go with it.
Those are all important. But the other important thing is he lost his contract. He was no longer a central contracted player. So that coming together of an agreement was a financial one. He didn't want necessarily a pay-per-play. He wanted just a bit more than that. So that's where the problems came about.
Yeah, right. Okay. Because I just found that I sort of feel like all those sort of things should have been overcome to have him play, and to have someone who also particularly played in the IPL. So to me, that's so valuable when you're playing over there in the conditions that you're going to be facing. I just found it such a bizarre decision.
Well, yeah. Well, it was.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us also
We
found
agree.
it bizarre. I was on the other side. I knew he wasn't going to be in. I just didn't think the backlash would be so much.
Really?
You kind of figured out going down throughout the series that Fast was coming back. And the question was how and what went wrong. So we're a land of tribunals and investigations. So it'll probably be a tribunal investigation if we get knocked out in the first round. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like, I think for me, when I look at the side, I kind of feel we have a side who've and Tim, you can back me up here, who have done better than what we all expected, even though the opposition wasn't like the best. The only issue about it is that we know Tournament Australia, we know Tournament West Indies, and there's no way that right now, I don't think we're beating England in Sharjah at the end of this tournament. So it comes down to trying to find a way around Australia. So it's kind of helpful that Australia's in some sort of a little bit of a turmoil, and they're also going through some struggles because our team can't struggle to score above 175 until against Pakistan the other night. So that was something. Yeah, that was something quite interesting, which is why the question is obviously, are there any people that you're worried about, Jelisa, from a South African perspective that could that Australia will be planning against tomorrow?
Not particular. I think I'm more worried about us beating ourselves in than anything, because I like those lead up games have just been so bad, and also because we actually do have the ability, I think, on our day to beat any side in the world. I think every player in our team is great, but I think I think it won't be hard to put Australia under a bit of mental pressure, and they are already under pressure. And I don't know if you've been following much of sort of what's been happening off the field in Australian cricket, but Justin Langer is under incredible pressure here as well, particularly after what happened against India. And I think it won't be hard, as you said, to get under the skin a little bit of Australia, and I can see us just throwing away wickets and beating ourselves.
I can confirm that both national coaches are under pressure for various reasons. Very different reasons, but both under excruciatingly pressure. The other thing I wanted to ask, if Australia said anything about whether they want to chase or whether they want to set a total in terms of the conditions with due factor and that sort of thing. If they said, do they have a preference?
They haven't, but I hope that they chase, because I think just given the impatience of some of our batters at the moment and that ability to panic a little bit, I think they need to know what they're chasing and how aggressive they need to be, because otherwise, and I hope that they don't play a conservative if they aren't chasing. I hope they aren't conservative. I certainly don't want that, but I do think there is a tendency to throw away your wicket pretty easily. So I hope that they chase, and I think given where they are and what they're struggling with, that would be the best method.
Tim, do you want South Africa to chase or set a total?
Difficult after watching the Pakistan game now. Very difficult. I would have said definitely not chase. Before Pakistan, never chase. No chase whatsoever. After Pakistan, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have no idea.
Tim, we're not India. Let's just put it out there. Win the toss, bat first. That's how South Africa wins this tournament. It's win the toss, bat first. There's nothing else. There's nothing like chasing. Because the problem is, and I think both teams have a similar thing, is that the bowling is so strong that they can win you games by just bombing teams out, because Hazelwood, Cummins, and Stark on their day are just amazing. Whereas, and on top of that, Kagiso, you've got Tabea Shamsi, you've got Anuk Nokia, who were incredible in the IPL as well. They can bomb teams out. And so it's strength versus strength from a bowling perspective. So I think tomorrow is going to come down which team bowls better and denies the other team a boundary. So obviously, Jelisa, you said that if Australia doesn't beat themselves, then that's a good thing. But are you hopeful for a win? Are you believing in a win? Or what are you expecting for tomorrow?
You know what? I'm hopeful, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more form in. I had a lot more hope before these warm-up games, because I just thought that I was looking at Bangladesh and the series against West Indies, and I thought, that's fine. We don't have our full-strength team. You can't really take too much from that. And so I thought these warm-up games would be very revealing, and they have been for the wrong reason, because even our bowling the other night was really concerning. We only took one wicket. Like, yeah, you're right. We played our best. Hazelwood didn't play in that one, but we played our best bowlers, and Agar was the only one to take a wicket. And so I think I've lost a little bit of hope. I'm very concerned, because I would have just liked to seen Finch, particularly Finch and Warner, come into a little bit more form. To be honest, heading into those warm-up matches, and looking at the fact that we were playing South Africa, and probably this sounds a bit disrespectful, but I thought, we'll easily do it over South Africa, but I don't think that we will.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping we do. Well, so on our end, I think we're all just like hoping that it just comes together somehow, and that they can repeat certain performances, because our worry is the batting, and whether the batting will come to fruition. And so they've done well so far, but I think we'll get there. Jelisa, I hope we talk again soon in this World Cup, and that would mean we'd be in the finals. So
that would be great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, so I really do hope that happens. It was really great talking to you. Thank you for giving us your insight into the Australian team, and how tomorrow is going to be a battle of teams with demons themselves, fighting themselves, and whichever team somehow beats their own demons will come through. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry my light has faded so quickly over here.
That's okay. That's all right.
That's okay.
Thanks
we don't have umpires here, so we still play on. So thank you very much, Jelisa. We'll chat soon.
Thank you.
So, Tim, there you have it. Thank you very much for bringing Jelisa on. It was really awesome. So both teams have demons. Both teams have questions coming into this game. Tim, you're from a South African perspective, and this is where I think we want to just go to the end of this thing.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Because it's a World Cup. We've had so many things go wrong before. How are you feeling?
I think that Pakistan game was a fast dawn. That was one man batting beautifully, magnificently, but I don't think it's going to last. I think we're going to come up short. I think Australia's going to pip us.
No, man.
Yeah, sorry. Maxi.
The picture behind you tells you we've done this before. We've been in a hole against Australia before, and they've come through. But so here's the thing for me about this, about Pakistan. We were talking about Rassie van der Dissen's role throughout the entire tournament, and he was that floater role, that Steve Smith floater role. And finally, when South Africa went 2 down, he came in. Okay, he came in when they lost an early wicket, and he showed what we've been saying all the time. If Rassie comes in the power play, he can carry you towards the end. And he accelerated at points. I thought they left it late, but he managed to get us there. And so for me, from a batting perspective, I think it creates a lot more problems for Mark, because obviously Temba's opening with Quinny, and Quinny's form is woeful at this time. I wish we had Ireland Quinny or Caribbean Quinny with us, but seemingly Dubai Quinny's not great right now. But then on the other end, you've got Markram and Rassi in that middle order who are seemingly finding form and are in form at this point in time. And so I don't know about you, but here's the first question for you. Who's starting at 3 tomorrow for you? Is it Markram or is it Rassi?
Rassi.
Okay.
No doubt in my mind, Rassi.
So Aiden's your floater, like he's always been.
Yeah, 100%. I've never really, as I said, been 100% behind Markram at this format. There's always been something in the back of my mind going, you know what? It just doesn't quite click.
When you say it, everyone still loves you. When I said I'm a Markram hater, but it's fine. It's okay. I'll take that. It's fine.
So yeah, for me, it's Rassi at 3. It's got to be. But my worry is what that batting order is going to be like. My worry is people like Miller are going to come in at 6 when we're chasing and it's too late. My worry is, as much as the batting order was right against Pakistan, I think we're going to get it wrong against Australia for a range of reasons.
So something that was interesting from Jelisa's conversation about how Australia are handling their batting. Obviously, Mitchell Marsh coming in at 3, we don't have that type. Actually, we do have that type of a player. And Mark Barch has played against him in an MSL final, and he still doesn't want to use him in that format. And that's Dwayne Pretorius, but it's fine. It's okay, Mark. I get you. But the ability for Steve Smith to be pushed down the order as a floater, and you just keep on bringing hitter after hitter. So you'll bring in Maxwell, then you'll bring in Stoynes, then you'll try maybe even a Pat Cummins, and you just move Steve Smith back is something that I think South Africa are not willing to do. And essentially it's the way they use David Miller. When Temba went out in that game, I don't know who the analyst is or what the analysis is. They chose to go for Heino Klaasen over David Miller. And the numbers, and the reason why the numbers probably moved towards Klaasen, but it's a smaller sample size than David Miller, whose average is 32 in T20s, which is like averaging 50 in Test cricket. Yeah. And then on top of that, he strikes at 140, which is what I want from a guy. Because if you give me 140 strike rate in 7 overs, that's great. But I know Heino Klaasen strikes at about 150, slightly higher. So that means Heino Klaasen's window is in the final 5 overs. It's not in the final 7 or 8. So I think that's where South Africa get it wrong. And I'm worried about that tomorrow as to what that looks like. But then
then I expect somebody like Sampa to utilize that. So when we are desperately needing for runs, Sampa comes in, wicket to wicket, strangles
Hazelwood
us.
As well.
And we're up 10, 15 short and we lose. That's my issue.
And to a certain extent, that's what happened in Pakistan. They held us so late to the fact that, because in Pakistan was matching South Africa toe-to-toe throughout their innings, but Pakistan had 2 good overs in overs 15 and over 17, whereas South Africa's big over was the last one. And you kind of want somebody in there, because David Miller hit quite well in that final over, got that 6 over square leg. But I think for me, that's where I'd like a little bit more creativity and a little more thinking. But I do understand that maybe you want to give guys an opportunity, but David Miller only faced like 10 balls in the warm-ups, which bothered me even more. Temba's form, Tim. Like I love Temba with my life. I will go to war for Temba, but I'm truly worried that he isn't match fit. And he's not finding rhythm, and it could hurt us.
The problem with him is the lack of rotation. I'm not expecting him to score 11 and over. That's not his role. His role is to cut down the dot ball percentage. And his dot ball percentage the last 2 games is a problem. So I am worried about that. I'm glad he's opening, because we can't have him anywhere else. We can't have him in number 4. And then we struggle, and then we have them build up of top balls. It is a concern. There's absolutely no doubt about it. For
Because
me,
we left about 20 runs on the table. If we're setting a total, we could have gotten to about 210.
Yeah.
Had he just rotated the strike a lot better. And I think for me that's the other worry. Tomorrow, so now let's move over to the bowling, right? From a bowling perspective, Tim, Tabraish Shamsi had a bit of a groin niggle. We haven't heard anything yet from them. We'll probably wait for the press conference later to find out. If Tabraish Shamsi is not fit, what happens then?
Then that's a tricky one, isn't it? Then it's a tricky one. Because it depends on how injured. That doesn't it? It depends how injured.
Yes, but if he's not playing for tomorrow's game, if he's not playing tomorrow, what happens? So we go with, because essentially you'd go with Bjorn and Keshav, and Aiden Markham then bowls the other, but it's just too similar.
Yeah, but you that's it. That you have to suck that up. You just have to suck that up. There isn't a perfect solution to that. That's the problem. There is not a perfect solution. When you have somebody like Quinton or Shamsi missing out, we lose a heck of a lot. So we will lose a heck of a lot if he doesn't play.
But against Pakistan, Shamsi didn't bowl. Quinton got bowled out very early. Was out very early, and we still won.
Yeah, that's true. But my problem is that was as I said at the beginning, it's a false stone. That was a run-off. Anyone can win a run-off. Anybody can win a run-off. Anybody can win a run-off.
So from a Quicks perspective, right? What lengths are you hoping the guys to bowl? And who do you think will be the three Quicks chosen?
Back of a length.
Mulder? Yes.
Mulder's inclusion in the squad was wrong. Sorry, it was wrong. It's just.
But he bowled well against Pakistan, though.
Yeah, but he's not a T20 cricketer. He's not a T20 cricketer. I would rather rely on Victoria bowling his 4 overs than Mulder. Far more consistent in his format.
So you want Dwayne. You want Dwayne. Who of the 3 Quicks are you picking for tomorrow? Because I'm assuming it's a 6-5 split. 2-3, 2 spinners, and 3 seamers, and Aiden being your 6th bowler tomorrow. So who are your 3 Quicks tomorrow? Your 2 Quicks with Dwayne, because we all have Dwayne in our teams.
Yes.
Except for
it's Rabada and Nokia.
Rabada and Nokia. Okay, and the lengths that they need to bowl, including Dwayne, is it lots of cutters? Is it what do they have to do tomorrow?
Yeah, but back of the length, slow balls. Don't give people like Storiness and Warner and Finch speed. If you give them speed, they will carve you up. They might be, particularly the openings, they might be short of runs, but if you give them something to hit, they will demolish you. So it's got to be cutters, it's got to be back of a length, it's got to be tight lines, no width, and aggressive, particularly from a Nokia. You bowl aggressively, that's fine, but you must keep that tight line as possible. Don't give them width.
What I liked about Kagiso and Pakistan in that game, a lot of the other Quicks, I think Ngidi and Nokia weren't doing quite well, but what's his thing? Kagiso bowled really well. He took the 3 wickets. He was spearing into that Yorker length at the death, and I think South Africa is going to struggle has been struggling with death bowling. But in that game, that one Kagiso actually did quite well in those 2 overs that he had at the death. I like the whole back of a length. I know Abu Dhabi is the largest stadium of the 3. And so essentially bowling back of the length and slow ball is forcing the ball to go square. And I think if South Africa can do that and force the Australians to hit with power, because everybody comes down the ground a lot more, and they're stronger to come down the ground, except for David Warner. David Warner is a lot more different. David Warner, you got to give him no width at all. You literally need to be as tight on that 4th stump as possible, especially with the angle with the right-handers. It's going to be quite interesting to see if they're going to start with Aiden to David Warner, to see if Aiden can't turn the ball away from David Warner, or they'll go with Keshav. against Aaron Finch. But it depends on probably depend on who's gonna open the batting in that first over. Obviously, the other bugbear of ours is the fielding. So the African fielding standards have dropped, and we just hope that that obviously in the CSA T20 lots of drop catches. We hope that doesn't carry into the tournament. But Tim, what's your 11 for tomorrow?
So it's going to be Quinton, Temper, Rassi, Markram, Miller, I suppose Klaassen, and then the bowlers. I mean, the bowlers, they pretty much sort themselves out. Maharaj,
Shamsi,
and Rabada, Husa, Pretorius.
Yeah, 27.
Yeah, 27. And particularly, that's a fluid situation. If we need 11 and over, he needs to come in at 5, not at 7 when we completely lost the game. So be careful of where we can use him in a fluid situation. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just worried about losing early wickets. I think we've seen how this team plays. You play until over 15, try get yourselves to over 15, and then figure out what you can get between 50, 60, 70 runs in the final. Because in the game against Pakistan, they got 72 runs in the final, final 5 overs. So it's that. So keep yourself in the game, South Africa, as long as possible. You need to try and keep yourselves in the game as long as possible on both ends. But obviously, we know the bowling can do it. I think tomorrow we're probably going to get about 160, between 150 and 160. Look at the way Australia have been playing. If it's anything above 175, we might find ourselves in a little bit of a sticky pickle with that Australian bowling attack. I do think that even though Australia are 7th best in the world, I do think they have South Africa. I think South Africa has the 2nd best bowling attack in this tournament. And I think Australia have the 3rd best. The only problem with Australia is those spinners, and I think that's where the issue lies with Australia. And I do think after us and India, the other bowling attacks are pretty similar. You just need to find a way to. You can score easily on them. You just need to find a way to navigate and find the easy spot. So I do think South Africa, there's no one in the South African bowling attack that Australia can attack, apart from when. If Aiden Markram has to bowl a few more overs because it's a spinner-friendly track. Outside of that, that 5, I don't think there's anybody that you can attack. Whereas if you look at Australia, give me Marcus Stoinis any day. I want him.
Give me
Maxwell. You can attack Mitchell Starc, especially as a right-hander, because if he's going to come left arm over, he's going to literally play to your pads, and it's Rassi van der Dussen territory right there. So, so I think tomorrow we're going old school. Strike rotation, get as many boundaries as you can, but rotate the strike, get to 170. If you get to 170, you should be able to defend 170. Outside of that, all the best, South Africa. Like we've always said with Tim as well, Tuesday, if you win these 2 games, you put yourself in the semi-final. You just have to navigate through Bangladesh and possibly even Sri Lanka, which is incredibly wild right now, that we're probably going to be a group of death. But yeah, if you can get through to Tuesday by winning both, you probably put yourself in the semi-final. So that's going to be quite interesting to see. I'm excited to see what Australia comes out. I hope it's not diamonds. I hope it's all rocks, as Jelisa has said. But thank you to her for joining. Tim, do you have any final words for tomorrow? Any words of encouragement for the Proteas? If they came on and watched our podcast, what would you say?
I would say bat attackingly. Take the risk. Bat positively.
No, you want to win a World Cup. When he records...
Yes, I know. But you can win a World Cup by playing positively. Positive cricket. Positive cricket all round. Batting, bowling. Just play positively. When you feel the pressure, put the pressure back on.
Yeah, so my words to the Proteas is it's the time for those big name players. If you have an IPL contract, your name's up there. You need to step up. It's the moment. You've played in the UAE. You guys need to lead the team forward. You need to be able to take this team home. Temba, it's been a tough couple of months, my man. We need you. We need you to get there. There's no pressure on your shoulders right now. I don't think there's a lot of people in South Africa expecting us to win, which is the best place for you to be, because in that spot, you have been the most incredible cricketer in the spot where nobody has ever when everybody has written you off. So you've done this before. You can do it again. You're an incredible leader. You're probably one of the greatest T20 brains I've ever come across in the field. And so just lead this team, take them through. These next two games are important. You said you had the plans. Now let's see them. And the proof in the pudding is in the eating, everybody. And so that's where we end this show. All the best to the Proteas tomorrow. We'll be watching. We'll be live tomorrow at 12 midday for ball-by-ball coverage of that World Cup, digital radio with YouTube watch along on 1WSR.com. Please do follow us on our different channels and subscribe and do everything that needs to be, because we will be following the Proteas all the way to that World Cup final. And we hope that it feels like this could be the time. And yeah, I don't know. Hope is beautiful, but it also can be devastating. Outside of that, thank you very much, Tim. Thank you very much to Jelisa as well. Yeah, that's the World T20 preview, everyone. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the game tomorrow. And then we'll be back again probably on Monday or even after the game to discuss how the game went. So that's going to be a fun one. So do watch out for that. And then we'll be back on Monday to do the preview for the West Indies. We've got guests coming in from the different countries to try and give us a taste of where their countries are standing. Like Australia is fighting themselves. Best place to be for South Africa right now. So that's going to be great. Thank you very much. Yes, Tim?
Our guest on Monday is a West Indian commentator. So that's enough to whet your appetite.
That's going to be great. So thank you very much, Tim, for all your work. It is the Full Quota podcast. Remember to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel and follow us on the different platforms. The end screen will show you where to follow us. Outside of that, have a great day. Enjoy the cricket tomorrow. And le sale kakakiso.